where did you grow up? Where did it all start for you?
Okay, so I mean, I was born in Albania, and I grew up there. But I mean, really, I guess I came to the States right before I was 7 years old. So from there on, I lived in Chelsea for a little bit, which wouldn't make much sense if you don't know where it is. But it's about 10 minutes outside of Boston, and then I moved like another 5 minutes further from outside of Boston. So I've been in this area my whole life. And even sometimes the accent will come out. If I'm talking to certain people, it'll just, I'm like, oh, gotta reel that back in.
You speak fluent Albanian?
I do. There's still some words that like there are words that never came up in conversation. So they're like, I'm still learning certain words, but yes, I completely understand people. And I can read it and write it. It just takes me a lot longer. So like when I'm speaking to my family, I'm like, can I just write you in English? Because my brain is going wild in a minute, and this is not, there's some disconnect here.
What did your parents do for a living?
So my parents, when I was living in Albania, my dad was actually the engineer for, like, one of the engineers that worked on the new airport that's there now,
cool.
Which is in Tirana, which is amazing because every time I fly in, I'm like, my dad helped build this. And my mom, my mom was at home at that time. I was still young, and I think she worked a little bit of a secretary job. But then when we came to the States, my dad went and got a certificate for engineering and stuff like that. He went to Northeastern, and my mom went and got some finance degree and something like that because her school wasn't enough for everything. And then she actually worked at Wells Fargo for a while, and that was intense because I remember seeing her she was a hustler. You know what I mean? So she would do everything and then come home and then cook everything and then clean everything, and I'm just like, okay, got it. Got to do all the things in the future.
Nice. Did they have any artistic pursuits or background that you can think of that maybe played a little bit into what you do now?
Well, it's funny because the only thing that I remember growing up is I would see my mom's she had drawings, doodles on things, cool. And she would she actually has this picture that we've been trying to find for the longest time. We know it's somewhere in between the files, but it's this picture of this little kid. It's kind of funny because he's got his back turned and he's peeing on something that he shouldn't be, and he's got this little cheeky face on. But then there's this outline of a girl in the distance that clearly looks like she's older, and we always joke, we're like, it's like you predicted that you're gonna have me and my younger brother and all that. And it's just this beautiful picture. She was always into fashion and design, and she would go get fabrics and then go to the tailor and be like, this is how I want it. So she was always creative in that sense. But then I found out later on that my dad, when he was younger, he was in a couple very small roles in a couple of local films and stuff like that. Oh, nice. And then I found out my grandmother used to sing in choir, and I'm like, where? What? Hello, you guys make me think I was the black sheep artist over here, but you guys are all artists. Hello.
So then who was your most influential person in your musician's journey? Who helped you realize that you wanted to be a musician?
So honestly, I mean, I think I can't put it on one person, but the one person that I would say, if we were starting from way back, would be Tina Turner. I would watch my mom dancing to Tina Turner, and I'd be like, that and that. Because it was never really one person, but it was these moments that, for example, Tina Turner, or later on Beyonce, or even now for me it's Dua Lipa. I see these artists, or I saw them get into this flow state, and where it was just this passion just came out. And then of course I would see my mom dancing and doing all the things, and I'm like, you're a superhero. Like, so I'm like, let me do a mishmash of all of this. So I mean, really, I think overall the theme would be people who are just so authentic and like really in their own, no matter how it may seem to the outside world.
And you took that and you dared the world to see you in these little talent shows and musicals that you did. How much did that help you find your stage presence? Do you feel like that's a big influencer in how you present yourself now?
Definitely. There's things I picked up when I was younger that I still carry with me. And everything leads to something else. And I think in the meantime of where I was on my path, it helped me like have that creative outlet, so I never put that fire out, you know. And then when I finally, I guess, felt confident and in the space to be able to do it, I unleashed, and here I am.
What do you remember fondly about those times? What are some memories that stick out for you that you look back on now?
I think it's just the whole process. Like I remember rehearsals from like day one to like, you know, the day of the show. And it was always amazing, no matter what it was, whether it was choir or, you know, musicals or all that. It always, you know, you start off like kind of anxious and you're like, you're getting everything down, and then you see the progress along the line. And then when the show would come, it's like something else took over. Like, even if you didn't feel like you were prepared, or like, I want to speak for myself, even if I didn't feel like I was prepared, because I don't feel like you're ever 100%, like, you know, there's always something you could do more, or something you could practice more. When time came for the show and there was all this crowd, this incredible energy, it was just something would happen on stage and I would just be like, in flow. I don't know. I think it's incredible.
Did you ever do like multiple performances, or was it always just a one-time thing after rehearsing it and doing it one time and that was it?
It was usually, well, actually for the musicals, I would say that with multiple performances, because you have like a couple nights that you do those shows, so that would be it. But when it came time for when it was for music and when I was in a band, it was usually one-offs, just because that's how it is. But like there would be multiple talent shows throughout the year, so we would try to get into everything, you know. So it might be a different song, but it's the same sauce.
Because I asked that question because, you know, the thing about stage performing that I find so fascinating and interesting, and I've, you know, talking to so many artists about it beforehand, and actually having done it myself, you know, a couple times in the very daring attempts that I've made, badly ones, by the way. But
I'm sure you did well.
But the one thing that I've always found fascinating was the idea of when you're doing multiple performances, that there's time where you play around with what you did the first time or the second time, and you kind of change it up and give it a different thing, just to try different things, because it affords you that freedom. And as a musical performer who would perform multiple nights, I would assume there's kind of a sameness to that, even though you're practicing a certain set list and things like that. So was that ever the case for you? Did you find that you had some like artistic freedom that you played with a little bit in like those multiple performance opportunities?
I could definitely see that, because especially, I mean, again, I would say for me it was mostly the musicals, but like when it came down to the shows, there was like maybe on the second night, because the first night's like, okay, like you want to do everything by the book, and then by the second night or the third night, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna hit this note higher, and I'm gonna move out a little bit more, maybe dance a little bit more intensely in this number or whatever it may have been. But I definitely can see that. And it's funny that you say that, because I've seen that in other artists when I've gone to live shows. Because I've, like, for example, Dua Lipa, I've gone to a couple of her shows from the same album. And it's interesting how the set changes and how everything kind of plays out. And then, of course, it's also the crowd, you know, like if you're in a different state or a different country, it's, you know, it's depending on the energy the crowd is giving you. And sometimes you're in a funnier mood, sometimes you're in a more serious mood, you know? So I could definitely see that. And I could definitely see myself doing that in the future too, like in a live show. That's definitely something that I would want to incorporate, just to make, because I feel like the shows, maybe even if they're quite similar, which of course they will be, it's fun. It's fun to change it up, even for yourself.
Santa Cutie, fill my stockings with the duplex and checks. Sign your X on the line, Santa Cutie, and hurry down the chimney tonight. Come and trim my Christmas tree with some decorations bought at Tiffany. I really do believe in you. Let's see if you believe in me.
It's just like, all right, throw myself like a like a little whirlwind here. Let's do it.
Well, and for artists like you, who probably incorporates a ton of choreography and performance elements, would you learn as much as you can up front so that you can switch it up on the dime, or would you kind of go by ear, and or is there an element of improv at all in any of that?
I always want to keep improv in there because I feel like if you're trying to always stay like not stagnant, but if you're always trying to keep something within a box, like it's almost like if I don't want to call it like you're going to make a mistake. So you kind of have to go with the flow. I understand how choreography might be a little difficult because especially when you have so many people and all that, and maybe that might be something that would stay the same. But let's say for songs that you change in the middle, that it might just be me. I would definitely like to change it up, and why not get creative? If you're going to do like hundreds of shows, like, I want to have fun too. Like, and if the more fun that I have, the more fun the people have. And it's just like this back and forth of energy. And it's just, I think it's incredible. So
plus it creates unique memories for those people who were at Rochester, but they weren't at Providence, right? Kind of that
100%. And then there are also going to be fans who maybe watch more of your show. They might travel a little bit with you. And it's like, let's party. Let's have a little bit of fun. Especially after all this, like we're definitely gonna party.
Yeah, for sure. When did this all turn for you? When did you decide that you were going to be a serious musician?
I graduated college. I did the corporate job, and then I remember like 6 months into the job, driving to work and being like, "What am I doing? Like, what am I doing?" And it had nothing to do with the job. I loved the job. I loved the people. I was working with like teachers, and it was just so fun when it came to that, and like. I loved helping them. My soul was just like, lady, we got business to do here. Like, what are you doing? And I think, it was kind of a harsh realization because, you do all these things and you just, everything's all prim and proper and all set up. And then you realize that I really don't want to be here. And it has nothing to do with anyone else besides me. So, at first it's kind of like, it all sets in. And then I just slowly started I was like, I don't know how, because, I pulled back so far from my creative side that I was like, I don't even know where to start anymore. I just know I have this deep burning desire to do singing, writing, dancing, and all of this. And I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. And I remember I actually started with auditions for The Voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. The first time I've ever auditioned for like a big show like this, the first time I remember being like, bewildered by like the amount of people and then just like the talent, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And it was a beautiful learning experience. I remember every time meeting different people and just sharing our stories, and it was just, and then it gave me just like that little bit more of that that fuel just to go a little bit further. Actually, it was because of one of the voice auditions that I ended up meeting some of the people from the studio that I currently work with. And it's funny because in the moment you're like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing in life. And then like now you look back and you're like, I swear everything's planned. Like everything works for each other. So
it's almost like kismet, right?
It is. That's what I say all the time. I'm like everything, and so now like I just try to like anytime I get into like, the thought spirals, I'm just like, Merlin, let's reel it back in. Like, how many times did this actually work out? Like if you just let it be. So, and then it's nice because you fortify your mindset and you fortify just like you kind of just see examples from your own life, and then not only that, but like even if there's something in life that maybe I haven't done or you haven't done, it doesn't have to be done before for it to get done, and it's and I think now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I get that, and whatever happens, it happens. I'm just going to keep going forward. And I remember when I was younger and I was actually in like some of the rehearsals for this IMTA that I did for New York. It was like a talent agency display thing. And one of the models that was talking to us, she was like, when I was younger, I just kept seeing signs, like, and I just, I would ignore it. And like, and then I went on, and then she essentially ended the whole segment with, it's like headlights in the fog. You don't need to see thousands of feet in front of you. All you need to see is the 200 feet in front of you, and then just go from there and just keep going from there. And that's something that's stuck with me. And I mean, with everything that happened, with everything that happened in my life, it just keeps proving itself to be more and more true as I go on. So I'm trying to have a little bit more faith and a lot less fear.
That must be tough for somebody with a bachelor in psychology to embrace the faith a little bit.
Definitely. But then there are things that I've learned that I'm like, okay, well, I'm also not going to let my mind go into loops because there's so many, you know what I mean? So I'm like, this helps. And then I also have to have a little bit of the faith. You know, try to balance it out.
You know, speaking of your bachelor of psychology, I'm curious what that part of your brain says about your pursuit of music, and has your degree helped you in any way in your career and taking the path that you chose in music?
It's funny because my logical side of my brain is definitely always like, so let's analyze this. Like, what do you mean by this? And what does that person mean by this? And blah, 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 blah. So that I don't think that's ever going to go away. I just have to learn to figure out what it actually means instead of going into the thought spirals. There are definitely concepts that come up though. And I remember being in class and just like doodling little things and being like, okay, like I want to make a song about this, but write it in a way that might sound like a love song, but it's really about like the way our brain works, you know, just things like that. And I mean, when you're for psychology, there's a lot of writing and reading. So at the end of the day, I think it all still helped because it just kept my brain going, and just there's situations you read about, and not only that, but there's a lot of like case studies and stuff like that give you a lot of empathy and just kind of broaden your brain a little bit more. Because sometimes we just get lost in our own little, like my world and all that. So I think it was nice on that side. The other thing is it helped me understand my family and then myself a little bit more. And then just, how we get into these like negative thought loops, which is totally normal because our brain loves to categorize and loves to, like, the negative things might stick out way more than the positive things. So I think it's definitely helped. But I wouldn't say necessarily with the songwriting. I would say with my mindset. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have your mindset correct, it's hard to do anything else. So,
well, we'll get into the songwriting a little bit later on here. But yeah, because I would say that actually there's a lot of like deep thought put into a lot of concepts. So, maybe. But also, because of your cultural background, I'm curious if there's specific things, if there's little nods or Easter egging or even overt things that you do that pays tribute to that side of things for you and your performances and your music.
It's funny actually that you say that, because the first two lines in the first song that I released, I give you my hand, you take my whole arm, is actually a phrase that we use in Albanian.
Oh, neat.
It's the whole and I didn't realize this until after I wrote it. I was like, oh yeah, it's like the give you an inch and take a mile thing, but it's like the American version. Whereas in Albanian, you say like, I give you my hand and you take my whole arm.
I give you my hand. You take my whole arm.
So, and that's actually like, that was a nod to like my family and everything. And then there's actually the dress concept with the red dress. It's actually like the adult version of a dress that I had growing up. It's this little red dress that my parents, like my uncle bought it for me when I was really little, and my whole family just loved it. So every birthday, every Christmas, like they had me wearing that same red dress. They're like, no, you got to wear the red dress. And I still have it to this day. I have it in my closet. And there have been so many family members who have asked me over the years, like, oh, so you're going to give it to me? I'm going to have a daughter, da, da, da. My dad's like, no. You're not giving it to anyone. If I see you giving it to anyone, I'm going to take it. And then he's like, we're going to frame it. You're not going to give it to anyone. And I'm like, okay. So I still have it. It's in like mint condition. I don't know how, because I wore it for so many holidays. But you know what? Maybe one day who knows? Who knows what'll happen with it? But it's definitely going to be staying for a while.
Also with the type of music and performance that you do make, there's a lot of expectation. There's a hybrid almost into the fashion sense of pop culture and fashion world. And I'm curious how much you pay attention to that and how much that goes into what you do and how you do it for the type of music that you perform. That is kind of a staple in that respect, the imagery.
100%. It's funny because it's always been something I've wanted to do. I didn't grow up with much, so like when I would just remember seeing like outfits, especially of course on pop stars and everything.
Well, Tina Turner, yeah.
Like oh my god, the sparkle dress! Oh, I want one. It'll happen. It's always, and like I mentioned before, like my mom as well, like she was always into like this like she had her own fashion, but it was always somehow also related. It was always like a modern take on everything that's going on. So between that and watching pop stars and all that, it's something that's always been ingrained in me. And it's fun now because now I'm like, okay, I get to put this element into there. Like I can't imagine, like I'm not saying that it's not possible. And I'm not saying that I would never do it or that it's bad or anything, but I can't ever imagine like having a sweater and like just like a plain sweater and like doing a music video. Like it's just not me. Like I need colors. I need juxtaposition. I need contrast. I need like everything is art to me. So I'm like, and on one side it can get a little overwhelming because I'm like, because I pay attention to so much detail that maybe people don't even catch. But for me, I'm like, no, that has to make sense, and that loops in with this, and this means that, and that's a whole ass metaphor. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be swearing, but it's a whole metaphor, and it's just, I think it's something that like the more and more opportunities that I get with fashion and all, and whether it's with photography or music videos or performances, I always want to incorporate like my style into it. It's just another way to express myself, and especially because I didn't get to when I was younger. Now I'm like, I may overdo it sometimes, but it's all in love. It's all in good fun. So
what you're saying is your NPR Tiny Desk will be a much bigger, grander stage than, when you get up there, you'll probably be on top of the desk singing. Right?
Probably, with a big sparkly dress on.
hanging like the tissue paper from the rafters and stuff like that.
I love it. Let's get creative.
See, and there's no reason why you can't do something like that in an NPR Tiny Desk. I think they would probably welcome something like that. They probably get too much stagnation in that kind of setting before. So
that's true, and I mean, not that anyone who goes there is not anything short of incredible, but
right.
Hey, I can bring my own pizzazz. I'm bringing it.
Well, I mean, you do most of this on your own. I mean, you have been a one-woman show for a very long time, and looking back at all the hustle you've put into this, what do you think you're most proud of? Everything
has had its own moment where I'm like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I can't believe I accomplished that. But honestly, I think I'm just proud of where I am at this moment, and not because there are so many moments in life that I almost gave up on. Like I remember there was actually 2 whole years when I didn't sing at all, not in the shower, nothing. I was just very, very like upset with my life and everything, and I didn't realize it. I was just trudging through, and it's funny because it's not funny. It's interesting. When I look back, I'm like, that was the saddest 2 years of my life, really.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, now that I'm at this point, like I said before, it may get hard. It may be long nights. It may be frustration about getting certain things done with myself. But I remember what that feeling is like. I'll never forget that feeling of almost giving up on my dream. And that's the thing that's always going to push me. And especially now having accomplished, like having put out music and having other stuff in the works for the future, I'm like, I'm not stopping this train. I'm letting it ride all the way. So whatever happens, happens. And at the end of the day, the way I see it is, even if nothing happens, there's no regret, because I already had that feeling of regret, and I can't imagine having that feeling later down the line. Like this is kind of like, for me, it's do or die time, and not to make it so melodramatic, but it's like
that totally makes sense. Do you look at all about the idea of being a woman doing this on your own in this industry? That's kind of, it's still, I mean, there's a lot more out there now, and the gaps are shrinking and shrinking more, but they're still very there's still a very large gap going on. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on looking at it from that perspective. Do you look at it from that perspective, or do you feel like, you know what, I'm an artist, I'm going to perform, and I'm just going to do the best I can and be the artist that I can be?
I definitely have seen it from that perspective, and I definitely have moments where that may come up. But then I just remind myself that at the end of the day, like you just said, I'm an artist. I'm just going to do my best, and if everything goes the way that I hope it would go, I would love to use my story as, maybe that'll inspire someone, even if it's one person. Nice. To go on further, to not give up on their dream, and that would be amazing, because at the end of the day, we do things for ourselves, but once we get to a certain point, we're doing it for other people. And I don't mean that in the sense of like we do things for other people. I mean in the sense of like we are just bigger than ourselves, the things that we do. It's
following your idol Tina Turner in a lot of respects, because Tina Turner got stuck in a bad situation. She pulled herself out of it and became 3 times bigger a megastar than she would have been with Ike by her side. She just did it all on her own, and she was determined, right? And there's something to be said for that, following your passion and being determined.
Definitely. And actually, and I don't know if you know this about that song, What's Love Got to Do with It? She almost didn't take that song. Like, she almost didn't want, and I was like, what? Like, but it's like, I completely agree with what you said. And I think that at the end of the day, like, she didn't know that all this was going to happen. Like, she was just following her. So, I mean, it's a fact. I'm a woman. I've gone through a lot of things, and I'm sure I'll continue to go through things, but I'm just never gonna let that stop me, because it's like I've been almost towards the edge of that point, and it's just, I'm not letting anything stop me, no matter what it is, no matter who it is.
The women inside me are tired. The worries, the hustle, the fighting. Wanna come me up just to try it. But you know it ain't right when you lie and I turn blue. This time I see you. I was blinded by my youth. This time I won't play the fool now. Bad girls, we got feelings too. Good girls wanna be bad too. Sad girls crying over you. Mad girls feel so used. Bad girls, we got feelings too. Breaks in a flat line. If you're gonna break my heart, then it's no. Should've known you were bad news from the start, but it's no. Now you say you wanna make it up to me, but your fake love ain't good enough for me. So if you're gonna break my heart, then it's no. So don't hold your breath, no. You must be fired up, 'cause I will be tired. I've had enough tension, begging for your affection. Crucify me when I'm wrong. Don't need you lying with your image. Devilish intentions. I don't like you, not at all. Don't need you. I won't play your foolish games. No, I won't give you anything you haven't earned. You must be fired up, 'cause I won't be tied up. Whoop, out your handcuffs, tripping, I stand up. You must think I owe you something. You must think I owe you something. So don't hold your breath. Staring at an empty line. Repeat and rewind. Repeat and rewind. There's something you need to know. It's the little things that kill your soul. Amuse me, come my way, confuse me. Don't behave, but don't abuse me. There's something you need to know. It's the little things that kill your soul. It's my party, let me play. I'm insane. I found your darker side.
Okay, so let's dive into your best, because you're producing some really, really amazing stuff. I mean, the visual elements of these videos are just spectacular. And even if it, like I was saying before, and I'll say it here while we're recording, even though it's not my type of music, I gravitate toward it because there's something that resonates deep inside that I feel like you're bringing out of people, and so you introduce the world with your single "Love," and I want to know kind of where the progression was. Why did that come first? Why was that the first song you decided to put out, and what do you love about it? What is it that you really think really resonates with you in this instance with this song?
So love, I mean, from the title to the concept behind it, I mean, for me, the first basic thing is love. It just makes sense to me. I started that song just wanting to give a piece of myself in a way that could wrap up like how I felt in my life up until that point. And I was like, this is just it. Like something a little slower, but a little darker, but also quite pop, that it represents parts of my life in ways that I remember thinking of the concept and everything coming together. And I was just like, I don't know why this is all just pouring out of me, the visuals, everything. And it was kind of hard to follow it because I was like, well, what should I do? Something a little cuter, a little, who knows? Like, a little more like XYZ. And then I don't know what it was, but everything was just like, no, whatever you have in mind, just do that. And like I said, even the red dress, that's the version of me that's all grown up. And that's the whole thing. Like the song is also like kind of like a letter to my younger self, warning against all this fantasy love, all this stuff that we see on TV. And it's funny because I had that intention along the way, and I didn't realize how beautifully it was all gonna come together. And then also the white version, like the white dress and everything, like that's supposed to be like my best self, my better self. And it's like these two kind of pieces of me that are not opposing, but also like there's like I'm trying to bridge the gap between them now, And I think that was just a pretty good representation of where I was at that point. And that song just kind of, it just flowed out. I had it ready for the studio, and then one thing led to another. It's that 200 feet with the lights.
So it took no time to produce it then. You were ready to go and it just happened.
Yeah, we changed like a couple of words here and there, and then we were just like, all right, so let's do it. Let's get in the studio, let's do it. And then even the concept, as we were like finishing it up, the concept of like the video came in. Like I was just like, I'm imagining this and that and this and that. It's like I don't know what's going on, but I'm just gonna do it.
This is an interesting industry right now, and the industry has changed so much, and it even got whacked in the head with the pandemic, and changed even on a dime from that. And you're coming in at this time, and you're looking at it. Did you guys have a discussion, you and your studio and the recording team, about should we be creating singles? Should we be doing albums? And what do you think about the approach about singles? Are you happy with that idea? And do you like that that's kind of our culture now? Or are you kind of hoping that sooner or later that albums will come back to the foray and you can produce a whole album?
Yeah. I think in the beginning it's important to do singles just because, first of all, I mean, you want to put out little by little, because I feel like if you're just starting out and you just put a whole album out, I mean, there's always a chance it can go great, but it's kind of just like, okay. And then I feel personally for myself, like as if I had put out a whole album right from the start and then the pandemic hit, that would have been so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because you want to go perform that album, you want to go put that album out, but how can you? It's hard. It's hard to be like, hey, the world's in this state, but listen to my music. Like listen to me. Like it's like yes, but no.
Yeah, give me an hour and a half as opposed to give me 5 minutes, right?
Exactly. So on that side, I definitely like the singles, but of course I'd love to do a whole body of work, because I put concepts, and I think of things, how to tie them in together, and I just it's interesting when things are on their own, but it's also interesting when they come in together and you're like, oh, it was actually part of this whole brain like thought thought loop over here. And then that kind of can give you a whole different understanding of a person, of an artist, and everything like that. So, and it is interesting where it is going right now. We're with a lot of singles, and I think part of that may have to do with just like how much there's being thrown at people, you know. But I always feel like it's just like all the '90s trends that came back. It's always going to loop right back into.
Yeah.
It's just.
There's vinyl has made a huge comeback, and
Right.
but there's also this idea, and I do it a lot because I have a lot of favorite bands, and for me, you know, everybody talks about their hits, and it's like, but I love the deep tracks. I love that. I feel like more like I, as a fan, am more connected to the ones that people don't readily gravitate toward a little bit more. It almost feels like my song, right? And so there's that idea behind it, right? So
I totally agree. And like you said, like, you know, there's the song that's on the radio, and there's the song that they may lead the concert with or end the concert with or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, when you're like a real fan, like you're just sitting there, like every word, you're like, why are you talking to me?
Or I can't believe they played that song live. That's so awesome, right?
That's so true. That is very true, especially when you go to different sets and you see that like artists like, you know, and then you're like, yes, oh my God, they played the song that I wanted them to play. So it's a very special moment. I've been on the other side, so I would love to do that for someone else.
You know, so you mentioned earlier how you connected with your producing team and your production company and the record company you work with, which is the Late Bloomers Club. And so talk a little bit about who they are and what they give to your music. What did they help you discover that you didn't have going in?
So with LBC, Late Bloomers Club, so, I mean, I was always worried about not worried, but I was always apprehensive with working with other people just because for me, my music has always been very telling. It's always, even if I didn't know what I was saying, I'd like write and things would come out and flow. And then I'd look back and I'm like, oh, okay, good to know.
Yeah.
That's when the psychology side comes out. It's like, oh, what do you think this means? I think with them, it was just, I was always, you know, I was apprehensive before, just kind of being like, well, are people going to even be listening to what I'm saying? Or is it just about, you know, just creating the track and then just getting me out of the studio? You know what I mean? Like
sure.
And then just walking into the studio and speaking with them the first time, they were just so calm and so sweet and just so understanding. Like they had, you know, they had gone through it too. And at the end of the day, I think that the right people do get pulled towards you one way or another. And that was my thing too. Like I'm the type of person, like once I start working with somebody, like you're kind of in. You know, like I always want to keep that connection, and I don't want to be giving my time, and neither should anybody else be giving their time to people who don't see them. And I always felt very seen with them and heard. And I always told them, I'm like, I will always take your recommendations. Like I will always listen to them. But at the end of the day, like if something doesn't sit right with me, I'm not going to do it. And they were just like, yeah, that's totally fine. You know, like we just want to hear each other out. And that's, you know, there's just so much respect for each other and how our individual brains work and everything like that. And just things happen to flow. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. So.
For sure. And as somebody who's been in recording sessions and seen recording sessions go and been part of record labels doing that kind of thing, I've seen like the egos just burst out of control, not from the artist perspective, but from the control perspective, from the producing perspective as well. So to have that give and take with a partner is invaluable, right? I mean, it just, it adds so much and then helps you define who you are a little bit.
Exactly, definitely. And then not only that, but the more that I could let my guard down in a sense, because I had my guard up, you know, especially at the beginning. The more I can let my guard down, the more that just flows, the more things just go naturally. And the more naturally things go, I mean, like, you couldn't really ask for more. Right.
It shows in the production, you know, so yeah.
Thank you. They're incredible people. And it's funny because they'll always try to like make me go a little bit out of my comfort zone. And I'm like, okay, I get where you're going with this. But this part, I'm not doing that. But we can do it in some other way over here. Nice. So there's always a really good connection there.
Where does putting a song together begin for you? Where do you start with a song?
So my writing process is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Nice. For example, for Code Blue, I was just walking. Like I was walking one day. I think I was walking my dog, and Code Blue just pops into my head, and I'm like. I'm like, that's cute. You know, adorable. And I'm just like walking along, keeps going. The next day happens again. It's been like 2 weeks and it's just happened. I'm like, all right, I'll write it down. Jeez. And I got my voice note. I took a voice note and I was like, all right. And then I'm just like, and then as soon as I took down that part, like the other lyrics, I just started thinking about them. They're like, if you didn't break, you know, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is going somewhere. But it's funny because I actually didn't realize what Code Blue meant in the moment. I didn't realize that it was about flatlining. I was like, that's a little heavy, you know?
Yeah.
And then as I'm like reading the lyrics, I'm like, but that also makes sense. Like, it also really fits in both together.
But you know it ain't right when you lie and I turn blue. This time I see you. I was blinded by my youth. This time I won't play the fool now. Bad girls, we got feelings too. Good girls wanna be bad too. Sad girls crying over you. Mad girls feel so used. Bad girls, we got feelings too. Good girls wanna be bad too. Sad girls crying over you. Heartbreaks in a flat line.
It's actually funny though because the version that I had written instead of the "break my heart" part, it was a little sadder. It was definitely like it was like, and I know you know too, just like very like, you know. And then the guys were like, we recorded it, we left the studio. It was like midnight. We had like another session in a couple days, and then the guys like I go into the studio. I'm like, hey guys, what's up? And they're like, okay. So we love this whole good girls, bad girls thing. They're like, this is so like hype. And then you go so sad. I'm like, what is that? They're like, we thought about this. And then they played it for me. Like, because one of them like sings and the other one just is super into it. So they're a great duo. But like, and I'm like listening to it. I'm like, and I wanted to not like it. I wanted to be like, no, my was better. Like, but it wasn't. Their way was way better. And it just came together so beautifully. And then I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, let's record it. Because it's also one of those things, like, at first, like it's a little fearful. You're like, I don't want to give this little piece of it. No, like, I did this. And, like, I'm still proud that happened because if it wasn't for that, this wouldn't have happened. But, yeah, and then we recorded it. And then, like, we played it back. And I'm like, I started smiling because I'm like, okay. Ego, relax, because they were right in the first place.
And you add the viola into this mix, which is that's just fantastic. That riff is just amazing. That's one of those classic ones that you once you hear it, you go, oh yeah, that's you. Now that song's yours. You own it, right? And
yeah.
And with music that you typically play, there is a lot of sampling. There's a lot of engineering that is involved. So, are you appreciative of the opportunity to have a little bit of that rawness in your sound when you get it?
100%. It was actually a friend of mine, Brittany Stockwell. She's incredible. She was just like, the guys were like, all right, do you want to keep something like raw in there? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And like, let's get Brittany in here. And the girl just goes into the studio and she's like, and I was just like, how are you so good? And I'm just loving it. And then literally like when it all came together, I was just like, there's no way that this couldn't have been in there. Like, I can't imagine the song starting in any other way. Like, right. It was meant to be. And I definitely, it's funny because when I first, because I recorded Love first and then we recorded Code Blue. And I just remember thinking like, I want more of this. I want more instrumentals. I just want more rawness. And it came together beautifully. And now I'm like, okay, so this is something that I'm going to keep, because you experiment a little and sometimes things don't work, but it just worked so well that I'm like, yeah, I don't know. There's like no denying it.
Is that the same with color for you? Because you utilize color very visually in your songs and in the videos themselves. And I'm curious, do you play around with colors or do you know exactly what color is going to represent what song you're doing?
I do, and that's the psychology side.
Yeah, nice.
Psychology side. I remember reading about certain colors are linked to certain emotions and all that. And I just remember being like, yeah, that's how I want to play it up in my music videos. For the Code Blue music video, the whole thing is supposed to be like an ode to the multidimensional woman. So I was like, there's no way that this is going to be like black and white, like plain and simple. Like, this has to be like color over here, color over there. Like, sometimes color that matches and sometimes color that clashes, and it's just a little bit of everything. And not only that, but growing up, I wore a lot of black, like a lot of like black and just plain clothes. So I feel like now I'm just really experimenting with color too. So it's fun, and it brings out these different emotions, and it's just I love it being vibrant and everything, and not only that, but Code Blue specifically is just kind of like a dancey, clubby song, and I can imagine it with like under the lights of this of the club or wherever it is. Like, that's just the vibe. That's the vibe that I want to do. And Love was a little slower, so it's like only 2 colors really. I mean, the beach, the sun had so many colors, so that was just, it almost looks fake at one point. I remember like us looking at some stills and being like, somebody's gonna say that was like a backdrop or something like that, but no, that was really the beach. We were going with the sun, rushing with it.
Well, as somebody who's a filmmaker, I understand filters and things like that, so I'm not going to say that. But I do love the way that you capture the water in that song. The water is it's very stark and very unique, and kind of, it's almost murky with being, it's a murkiness, but it's got clearness to it too, which is very cool. Whoever filmed that did a very fantastic job of really capturing the essence of that, and kind of taking the color out of it to kind of enhance it.
Definitely, Jim's incredible, and I don't like that shoot almost didn't happen that day because we were shooting. I think it was on Memorial Day weekend or something like that.
Oh wow!
What's the holiday right before everyone goes back to school?
Oh, Labor Day.
Labor Day weekend, yes, and we like none of us paid attention to the fact that it was Labor. Like we're like, oh yeah, let's do it. It was like August 31st. None of us we're like yeah, let's just get everything ready, and then literally we like the day before we're like, oh okay, so this is gonna be interesting. And we actually, when we got to the beach, there was there's like a bunch of us, we're all in separate cars, we all got all this equipment, and like there's other people in line waiting for parking, to the point where like they turned everyone around. They literally were like, sorry guys, like there's not going to be any more parking for tonight. And I'm like, no, there's going to be parking. I don't know how, but there's going to be parking. We're going to figure this out. I like pulled over to the side. I was like half praying, half like just talking to myself. I'm like, okay, I don't know how this is going to work out. This is going to work out. We're going to do something. It's all just, I was like, I'm not going to let myself get upset. I'm not going to ruin my makeup.
Yeah, right.
So it was just beautiful how it came together.
I was going to ask about the makeup aspect of it. Did you have to do that in the car? Did you have to do that before and then drive to where you were going to shoot, or did you do that at the beach? Because I got to imagine doing it at the beach would be impossible.
It was both. So we did most of it before we went there. The makeup artist came to my house. She was so sweet. She was like, yep, we're going to get everything done. Obviously, I had packed my car before, so I was like, I'm not sweating a bit, because it's August as well, so it's like it's hot. Like the hair too.
Yeah, you had to drive with the windows up.
Yeah, I was like AC full blast. I was like, don't move. I was like, don't touch your face. You can't blink. Don't cry. Don't do anything. And that worked out well. Like, so the only thing is though, so now when we shot the scenes with the straight hair and like the white outfit first. So we got everything prepped. However, the makeup artist, she's so sweet, Shauna. She's like, she grabbed she had this generator, this mini generator, so she could curl my hair at the beach. Oh, so I'm sitting there at like a beach chair, and she's just like doing everything, and I'm like, I'm not gonna move. She's just like curling my hair. I'm like, you're a wizard. Like, I don't know how you're doing this. She like touched up my makeup, and every time there was anything out of line, she was just like, hold on, runs over. She's like, okay, you can do that now. It was amazing.
How long was the shoot? Because people may not know that 5 minutes, it doesn't mean it's 5 minutes. It's probably more like 5 or 6 hours, I would assume.
Exactly. And the thing is, we were actually supposed to shoot for longer because we were, like I said, we got turned around. We had to wait about an hour just to get everybody in, and like even for myself, I was supposed to be on set earlier, and like the director was there with his family, so his kids actually set up like the wooden like fire thing.
Oh, neat.
They set that up. They were like, and I was like, thanks guys, and they're just like, look like a princess, and I'm like, you guys are amazing. So it was a whole team effort. But the thing is, like, once we got in, we were like, okay, like game time, because that's the thing. It was like we were like, okay, we have an hour of sunlight, and we need all these shots with the full sun, and then we need to get them all, partial sun going down and all before it gets dark. So everyone just tightened the reins, and everyone was like, there's like it was like such a well-oiled machine, and everyone knew what they were doing, and there was a second that was wasted. No matter what we actually ended up having a little bit more time in it, like for right before the sun was going to go down. So we just like did some extra shots, and that's actually where the intro came from with the drone, and like we had like the bomb, like the color bomb stuff. And that was fun. I burned part of the dress on the back. It was okay. It was the part you couldn't see, and I was like, it's a bunch of tools, so let me just fix that up real quick. Nice. And that dress was actually layers and layers and layers of tulle. So, it was light when I was like walking, and then we got water.
It heavied up.
It was not so light anymore. I was sitting there like, and actually I had like, I'm working on it, but I had like this irrational fear of like deep water, and I'm just sitting there like, gotta put your acting face on, girl. Like you can't just let yourself like.
Well, knowing that it got heavy, you had to take some comfort in it. If you got pulled out to sea, you'd be floating.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I hope that's how it would have worked out.
Yeah, right.
I never got to know. It was actually pretty calm, the waters too, that day. And I was like, thank God. Perfectly. Imagine like being like waves, and you just like ruining Shauna's all her work and everything. So that's the other thing too. I was just like, don't get anything wet that doesn't have to get wet. But the sand was fun too. That was obviously one of the last things, because once the sand got in everything. Yeah,
it was over.
That was a wrap. It was very interesting driving home. Like I had to leave it on, and like as it was drying, more and more was coming out on my front porch, and I was like, thank God I didn't bring that inside to my poor washer and dryer.
So you mentioned how Code Blue you can imagine under club lights and things like that, and you haven't been afforded the opportunity to go out and perform these yet because of the pandemic and things like that. So are you really itching at that opportunity? Do you feel like you're ready for this, and the time has come to get out there and start putting this onto a stage?
Definitely. And it's funny because after putting out Love and everything going the way it did, like I don't know if I was necessarily ready for a whole stage. Not that I didn't miss the stage in general, but I just was like, I don't feel like I'm quite there yet with my music. But now with everything, like I took this whole time to like, really work on my mindset, and then I've created other things in the meantime that I'm like, now I can see the whole set. Now I can see the whole concept. And I definitely want to perform it all, and I want it to be such like a high energy thing, and I feel like it will be, because I'm sure a lot of people are itching to go out and just have a good time and just enjoy some live music again and let loose in like the most natural way, like just dance and just sing along and all that. So, and now I'm definitely at that point, and that's another thing. Like in my shows, like I'm definitely going to be including color and playing with lights and all that. Like I want to use as many elements as I can without making it too wild. I also want to be able to be seen, But yeah, I'm definitely ready, and however the opportunity presents itself.
I don't want you to give anything away, because I want people to be surprised when they come and see you. But you have done a cover of Santa Baby before, so that's out there on your website, and you can go check that out. Are you going to incorporate some covers? Do you have some ideas for some things that you're going to incorporate? Because obviously you probably don't have a full set list yet, but you have a pretty good working one. So is there something you're going to incorporate? You don't have to tell us what it is, but just mention that maybe you're going to be doing stuff like that.
Definitely. There's a lot of artists that I loved growing up, and I can definitely see myself singing a couple of their songs. So I just think it depends on maybe where I'm playing, because I definitely have a couple of ideas, but yeah, it depends on where I'm playing, the mood of the crowd. And I think it's just going to be, and I think that's where it's going to be one of those things where I'm like, okay, so I have a couple of ideas, and obviously right before I'll just set one of the songs or two of the songs, and then just go from there. And that'll be the element where it's like, okay, like if I'm playing in a certain place, maybe it's something that's a little bit more relaxed, and if I'm playing in another place, maybe something that's a little more wild.
Nice. Do you and your team have a plan for going out? Do you have a strategy? Do you have dates lined up already, or is there something that we can look forward to?
Nothing is set in stone yet, just because I know that everything's opening up, but there's still so many, like, there are venues that are still getting back on their feet. And I think that there's things that are tentative, but in the meantime, there might be like a live stream that comes together. Not sure on a date yet, but I'd love to get together with some other like local artists and just do something and just tie it into some charity as well, because at the end of the day, you know, it's all about really giving back. So one way or another. So, and I would just love to perform. So that's good enough for me.
So, you know, so it's interesting. You're releasing these singles one at a time. Are you kind of doing like a song a month thing? Is that kind of the idea to build up to an album, or are you just releasing them when you feel like they're done?
It's more of what you said in the beginning, the song like a month or something like that. But it is leading up to something bigger. There's actually an EP in the works that's going to come out towards the end of summer. I do have a name for it if you want to know.
Oh yeah. We would love that. We love it.
The EP is going to be called Dark Matter.
Ah, neat.
So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And then I already have ideas for later on. So down the line, it'll all make sense. It'll all loop back in together. That's the psychology side.
Yeah.
But now I feel like that's the perfect, just like Love was like the perfect representation of, to me, about how everything that's come up to that point and what I would say to like my past self. I think that's what Dark Matter will be. And then of course there'll be other things that come along.
Nice. I was gonna say that's very psychologist like.
Just a little bit. It's never gonna leave completely. It's always gonna be there, which I love, because I always loved psychology. It was one of the electives I took in high school. You know, like when everybody else was like, "Oh, I'll take like painting," I'm like, "I want to do psychology." Like, and I still, you know, I'll read books on it and stuff like that. And I just love trying to understand people. Trying being the operative word, because we're always throwing each other for loops. But
well, I have a feeling you're going to make it cool, so that's cool.
Thank you. I hope so.
So what does every Merlin song have to have in it? What do you feel like it has to have?
I think it always has to have a piece of me. It has to have a piece of my truth. If it's not something that I've gone through myself, or something that, you know, it's something that has been very close to me one way or another. I love club songs. I love songs that just make you kind of just forget about what's going on. You know, that everything has a time and a place. But I always want to have some element of truth in it. Even if I make it a club song, I need, if it's not the lyrics, or something to be authentically me. Whether it might be maybe I might incorporate more of like an Albanian type beat, something like that, but something that like I have had in myself as a truth at one point or another, or maybe like where I'm going towards. So it's I think a piece of me would be the short way of of answering that. It's something I always wanted to do, but I needed to go through some stuff before getting to this point. And now here I am. I was very anxious, of course, and I just didn't, I was just afraid of not being enough and not, you know, rising to the occasion. But not only was I able to do that because, you know, I was surrounded by great people, but there was just a vibe that's constantly going on in here. And especially with you, like Late Boomers Club, it's just every time we get together, even if things don't go the way that we originally planned, it always ends up being something better. So it's like, it either goes exactly how it's supposed to or better. So I can't ask for more. It's always been a good time. It's magic.
Love, just be patient, these things take some time. Love, they'll be waiting but won't line up right. Love, I'm just fading, craving light. I'm feeling sick tonight.